Matt. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coach Craig Sports. This is going to be the live stream for Week 1 of the NFL season. If you guys are new to this channel, my name's Craig. A lot of people call me Coach Craig. I've been doing fantasy football for about 15 years now. Just recently started putting out advice. I want to talk first off about Week 1, just going over some injuries and other stuff like that I'm looking out for this week. So we're going to go over some news real quick first. So I got a couple different sites up here. I got Sleeper, we got Roto World, a lot of different ones that are coming out there. So just little news notes. Jarvis Landry will see limited snaps. So Jarvis Landry's going to see limited snaps. That might affect his value a little bit. You're still probably going to start him if you're going to start him either way. Mike Williams is likely to play today. He had that shoulder injury, but he's not somebody I'm going to be starting anyways. David Montgomery is still listed as questionable, expected to play. If you have a pivot, I'd go ahead and do it. If not, you can feel free to play him as well. Mike Evans is still questionable, but there is a chance that he'll play. He's not somebody I'm looking to start this week. But if you need to play him, then that's fine. Jalen Reagor, he's likely going to play. He's got that shoulder injury. I would not touch him at all this week. We got to see what he does. And he's going to be limited with that shoulder injury as well. Courtland Sutton will likely be a game time decision. Sounds like he's going to actually play, but I wouldn't count on him too much. And if you got a pivot, I'd go ahead and do it. And let's see. No other big ones here. Tevin Coleman is probably not going to play, or it sounds like Tevin Coleman's not going to play due to the air quality conditions. This would give a bump up to Raheem Mostert, Jerick McKinnon, and possibly even Jeff Wilson Jr. if you're in a deep league. So just keep an eye out on that. Ayuk's still questionable for Week 1. Deebo Samuel obviously went on IR, so that was the big news for the 49ers. So just keep an eye out for all that. Brashard Perriman's going to play. Darrell Henderson's going to play. So just a couple quick ones there. But like I was saying, guys, if you're new to the channel, please check out some of my other content. We're putting out a lot of videos. I also started writing for the Podcasting Network. I got my first article out there based on streaming defenses and just like streaming defenses this year, especially with the COVID situation. One of the reports that did come out was nobody new tested positive, so that's a great sign going into Week 1. We got some other news here. I'm on Roto World now. So Matt Stafford, that's just him changing his contract. Not too worried about, so that doesn't really affect fantasy. It sounds like the 49ers game is still on schedule, even despite the air quality concerns, so that's good. Obviously, I think the only one that's really going to be affected so far is Tevin Coleman. Ziggy Ansah might sign with the 49ers. That would help bump up their defense just a little bit, but nothing for this week. Kendall Fuller is reportedly out for Week 1 against the Eagles, cornerback for the Washington football team. Doesn't make too big a difference. I mean, Deshaun Jackson's still going to be a good play this week. Might help Carson Wentz a little bit, but otherwise, not too big a deal otherwise. Jimmy Smith is questionable. If he doesn't play, this might actually help out Jarvis Landry a little bit. Jimmy Smith was kind of used in the slot last year, so if Landry goes against one of them other guys, it might help them out, but they have so many great corners there between Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, and Young that it's probably not going to make that big a difference either way. Like I said, we already talked about Mike Williams. J.C. Treader, center for Browns, is questionable. That might impact Baker a little bit. It might impact their run game a little bit if he doesn't play. Then Lane Johnson says he's going to try to play for the Eagles. It's a good sign. They're already missing 2 offensive linemen. If he was out, their offensive line would take a big hit, and they're playing against a really good defensive line for Washington. N'Keal Harry is supposedly good to go. He had a shoulder injury. He's not somebody you should be starting Week 1 regardless. And even though they don't have a whole lot of weapons in the passing game, see what else we got here. I got the injury report up in another tab, and then I got another tab where I'm going to go through the inactives once they are up. I'm going to refresh the inactives tab real quick, just see if there's any update yet. Doesn't look like there is. Probably in about 20 minutes or so we'll have a better idea of that. Then we got Tevin Coleman's probably not going to play due to the air quality. We already talked about that a little bit. These are most of the same. Let's see. Jeffrey Okudah is not expected to play today against the Bears. I don't think this is a major issue, but Okudah, he was likely not going to start anyways. He's kind of their third corner, but it kind of bumps up Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller. Obviously, Okudah is still probably their best corner, even though he's a rookie. But then you got Coleman and Trufant on the outside now, and Coleman's not great on the outside. We'll see if he shifts to the inside when Miller moves to the inside as well. We talked about Montgomery already. Talked about Mike Evans already. Gunnar Olszewski is not somebody like you really need to know for fantasy, but he's another wide receiver for the Patriots that got put on IR. Like I said, with N'Keal Harry, they don't have a lot of pass catchers there that are really healthy. They cut Sanu, which was kind of weird, but he didn't. Having Sanu and Edelman didn't make a lot of sense because they're both best used out of the slot. This kind of bumps up Julian Edelman some more, I would think. It might bump up Harry a little bit. Another guy that I have as a sleeper is Jacoby Myers. He was an undrafted free agent rookie last year. He played all right towards the end of the year, and I think he's got talent. And if he can kind of connect with Cam, he could be a sleeper for fantasy. He did have a little bit of a shoulder injury himself in training camp that kind of limited him as well. Then they brought Nick Folk to the active roster. Kicker, we don't need to talk too much about that. Same thing down here with the Bears with Kyrie Santos. Deebo Samuel, like I said, on IR. So he's going to miss 3 weeks. So this obviously bumps up Brandon Ayuk a little bit. It bumps up George Kittle. And it could bump up Kendrick Bourne and possibly Trent Taylor as well. We're going to watch the game today and see how that kind of pans out for all of them. But week 1, you're probably not starting most of them guys besides George Kittle, obviously. Josh Norman went on IR. Doesn't really make a big difference because the Jets wide receivers are like dead in the water right now either way. We'll go through, see if there's any more news. Obviously, Miles Sanders was the big one. Him not traveling to Washington. So Boston Scott obviously got a big bump up. It also helps Corey Clement as well. Don't go too crazy with Boston Scott out there, especially like this week. I see people like, oh, we're going to start him over a running back we took in like the 3rd round. Don't start like Boston Scott over like Chris Carson or somebody like that. You need your safety, but if you're starting him in like the flex spot over somebody else, that's fine. Vic Beasley's out for week 1 against the Broncos. It could hurt the pass rush a little bit for Tennessee. Might help out Drew Lock a little bit. Dory Jackson out for week 1 against the Broncos. That's actually a little bit of big news. If Courtland Sutton plays, this could help him. If Courtland Sutton doesn't play, this probably helps Jerry Jeudy. So Jerry Jeudy is probably somebody to look out for, especially if Sutton doesn't play and Dory Jackson's out as well. Hamler's still questionable. I don't think he's going to play. The way it sounded early in camp is it didn't sound like he was going to play for a couple weeks. Corey Davis questionable. We'll go through the injury designation on another page here real quick. Okay. Let's see. I'm going over the chat now. It looks like Nathan asked a question. He said, hearing Evans will be more of a decoy today. Which wide receiver benefits for the Bucks? So, for this question, I think Evans was kind of just, to me, Evans was a decoy in general because he hasn't put up big numbers against Lattimore. And with him having the hamstring injury, if Lattimore's still on him, I think Godwin benefits the most from this. If I remember correctly, Williams is probably going to cover Godwin, and that's a mismatch. But if Evans wouldn't play for some reason and Lattimore's on Godwin, I think that hurts Godwin a lot. But with that being said, you could also see OJ Howard have a decent game. I don't think this game is going to be as high scoring as many people think, but maybe OJ Howard or Scotty Miller benefits as well. It'd be interesting to see how Tampa Bay uses their offense. So let's go over here. We're going to go over the injury report. We'll go through all of it, just make a note of all the impacts. So the Cardinals 49ers, Josh Jones, he's out with an ankle injury for the Cardinals. He was their right tackle. This will make a little bit of an impact for them. Might make it a little bit harder for Kenyon Drake to run the ball. Kyler Murray might lose a little bit of the time he has in the pocket. Jones was a rookie, but he was somebody I like coming out of the draft, and I think could help their offensive line. Probably benefits the 49ers defense a little bit more. We already talked about Deebo Samuel being out. Jason Verrett is another one that's kind of interesting. This probably helps Christian Kirk a little bit because he's probably going to cover Kirk. Kirk's somebody that I don't mind in this matchup, but he's not somebody I'm rushing to start either. Brandon Ayuk, we talked a little bit about already with the hamstring injury. Like I said, I'm not counting on any of the wide receivers for the 49ers besides George Kittle, but he's a tight end. Bears and Lions. Let's see. Bears and Lions. Jermaine Ifedi, they have him listed down as a tackle. He's going to play guard for the Bears. If he misses time, that could hurt the Bears a little bit. Khalil Mack, I think, is going to play. If he misses time, obviously you wouldn't want to play their defense. I don't know if many people are actually playing their defense this week anyways. David Montgomery, we talked about a little bit already. Cordell Patterson, Buster Skrine. So the big one here is probably Robert Quinn. He's doubtful, so he's probably not going to play. That makes the Bears defense a little better. Probably makes Matt Stafford a little better as well. But Stafford might be missing a couple guys as well. Hunter Bryant. So the Lions, the big ones here is I ain't even gonna try to pronounce his name, but Vaitai, the tackle. He was actually their starting right tackle. Him being out is probably gonna impact Stafford's time to throw the ball. Then we got Danny Amendola with the hamstring injury. If he misses time, I think it's gonna help Hockenson out quite a bit. Obviously, you got Kenny Galladay down below that's doubtful. And if Hockenson could have a big week, especially if Amendola and Galladay are both out. Most of these other guys aren't too big a thing. We already talked about Okudah. Then the Browns and the Ravens. So Chris Hubbard, I don't think that was too big a deal because he was probably not going to start on the offensive line anyways. Kevin Johnson was the nickel corner and Greedy Williams. So this impacts Hollywood Brown could have a little bump up if Denzel Ward doesn't shadow him. Otherwise, maybe a second wide receiver stands out for the Ravens, but it's not somebody you're going to want to start in fantasy, and you're pretty much guessing who it's going to be either way. We already talked about Treader a little bit. The Ravens, Justice Hill's out with the thigh injury, so this helps Mark Ingram, and helps Gus Edwards, and helps J.K. Dobbins. Depending on how they split the carries, you could see them all get maybe a carry or two more, but nothing too major. I think Mark Ingram's still a guy to start. I'm not starting Dobbins week 1. Questionable. We talked about Jimmy Smith a little bit. Tyree Phillips. I'm not sure if he's actually going to start at guard, but if he's out, it could be a little bit of an issue. Packers and Vikings. No, not too many big injuries here. Vikings don't even have anybody listed. The Packers are going to be Packers guard Billy Turner. He's doubtful, so that he could be without a starting guard. Not too big a deal, really, though. It just depends if Michael Pierce lines up over him or not. Could impact the running game just a little bit. The Colts and Jaguars, nobody real notable here on the injured list. Raiders don't have anybody. Panthers, the biggest one's probably Stephen Weatherly here. But even then, he's not going to be a big impact for fantasy. Chargers here, this is one that could be real interesting. So the Chargers are without starting center Mike Pouncey. Brian Bulaga and Trey Turner are both questionable, so that could be 3 potential offensive linemen. Could hurt the way they run the ball a little bit today if all 3 of them do miss. Maybe they use Austin Eckler more in the passing game, and they try to run the ball a little bit less. The Bengals' defense isn't that great, but their defensive line is decent. Then we already talked about Mike Williams. Defensive line. So then the Bengals are going to be without Geno Atkins, Sean Williams, and LaShawn Sims. Atkins is probably the biggest name there. Sean Williams is kind of a big name too, but they have Von Bell to replace him. Atkins is probably going to be replaced by Mike Daniels if he's healthy to go as well. Then the Dolphins and the Patriots. The Dolphins just have one guy, backup safety. Patriots, they got... Patriots ones aren't too big. The biggest one's probably Chase Winovich. If he can play, that helps out their defense quite a bit. They lost quite a bit of pieces in the offseason. But if he can't play, you're going to be looking at guys like Jennings and Uche to start week 1, possibly. Then the Jets and the Bills. Then we got the Jets and the Bills. Let's see. Joe Flacco is not a big deal. Denzel Mims, he could have a little bit of impact for Sam Darnold. You're probably not starting Sam Darnold anyways. You weren't going to be starting Denzel Mims. Alex Lewis could make a little bit of an impact if he was to miss. Might help or might hurt Le'Veon Bell a little bit. If Marcus May misses time, they could turn to Ashton Davis at safety. It's not a massive downgrade, but it is a rookie, and it could possibly help out maybe Stephon Diggs or John Brown or Josh Allen as well. Josh Norman being out, we already talked about a little bit. Eagles and Washington. So we talked about the big ones. Miles Sanders being out. Alshon Jeffrey, we obviously knew was going to be out already. Derek Barnett being out. It hurts the Eagles' defense a little bit. Like I said earlier, Lane Johnson, if he can play, that helps Wentz. But if he can't play, that Washington defensive line could have a big day. Seattle and Atlanta. So Seattle's going to be missing offensive tackle. If I remember correctly, he's one of their starters. He's not a great offensive tackle, but he's still probably better than whoever they're going to bring in. Then on the Falcons side, the big one here would probably be Kendall Sheffield. He's one of their main corners, and their corners aren't that great to begin with. I think Tyler Lockett's going to actually have a big day in this game, especially if they try to put rookie A.J. Terrell on him. We already talked about Mike Evans a little bit. Saints are going to be without Marcus Davenport and Cesar Ruiz. So Davenport's a pretty big one. Obviously, you're not going to have as much pass rush on Tom Brady without Davenport. And then Ruiz is kind of an important part of their offensive line, but he still was a rookie as well. P.J. Williams is questionable. And then we got the Cowboys and the Rams. The only one out for the Cowboys is Jordan Lewis. He's kind of like their nickel. So maybe this helps Cooper Kupp just a little bit. But that's kind of going through the injury report real quick. I think some of the inactives are out now, so I'm going to refresh the page, see if they pop up. Doesn't look like it's popping up there, but on ESPN it seemed like some of mine. I did get a notification on ESPN on my phone, so I'm going to see if I can bring that up real quick as well. Huh. Let's see. Sorry about that, guys. Just trying to see if I can find that real quick. Otherwise, I think the inactives will probably be up in about 5 minutes. But I'll go through a couple of the matchups that I'm looking at. And I'll go through a couple of the games just and talk about. I'm going to go through a couple of games. I'll talk about the things I'm looking for, a couple of players I like in the game. So we'll start with Washington and Philadelphia. So in this game, I think Carson Wentz will be all right. I had him as one of my sits of the week just because he's missing some offensive linemen. He's missing Miles Sanders now. I don't think he's going to have a great game, but I think he's going to have an all right game. Deshaun Jackson, I do like a lot in this matchup. If you have him on your bench, it's probably the 1 week that you're going to be able to start him and feel pretty good about it. Then Boston Scott, if you got him, you can play him as a flex spot. Not too crazy otherwise. Then the Washington football team, I got. Obviously, you're not going to be starting Haskins. The running back situation is the one I'm really watching today. So we want to see how many times Antonio Gibson is going to get the ball. How many touches, whether it's carries or receptions. And then if Bryce Love plays, we want to see how many touches he gets as well. I think Bryce Love's a very good player, and I think that he could have an impact overall if he's healthy. And then obviously you got Terry McLaurin. We all know about him after last year. But then who steps up and kind of is that second wide receiver for Washington? Is it Steven Sims Jr.? Is it Dontrell Inman? Is it Antonio Gandy Golden? Or is it nobody? Is Logan Thomas going to be a factor this year? I know he's been getting a lot of hype out of camp. Just a lot to see how both defenses play, especially in week one. Like I said, guys, there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in week one, especially for fantasy football. Don't overreact too much. Sit back, enjoy the games. Hopefully you guys pick some good players. Hopefully you got a pretty solid team, and then in the coming weeks we can help you guys pick out some good waiver wire picks and help figure out some matchups as well. And then Miami and New England. So Miami and New England, pretty much in this game, I don't think anybody's gonna be starting Ryan Fitzpatrick today. Jordan Howard, I'm fine if you want to roll him out there. Breida, I'm not crazy about this week. I think he benefited a lot from playing for San Francisco, and he's just a guy that gets hurt a lot too, so that worries me a lot. Devontae Parker, I'm not playing this week. He's banged up. He's going against Gilmore. And then Preston Williams, he's a guy I'd rather wait a week or two and see how he is coming off that major injury. Gesicki could have an okay game, but it's not the best matchup in the world. I think Miami's defense is going to be better than it was last year, but it's still probably not worth playing against the Patriots. But if you're in a DFS or something and you just want to do a real cheap defense, it could be worth trying. I mean, Cam Newton, he pretty much hasn't played in a year, and it's not like the Patriots have world beaters at wide receiver or tight end. And Sony Michel's coming off off-season surgery, and then they just got Rex Burkhead and James White. It's not like they have a great offense. And then the Patriots, you can start Cam Newton today, but I'm only doing it in one of my Superflex leagues. I have him in a couple different leagues. I think he could be all right this year, but he's just one of them guys you want to see him be healthy. You want to see him do it. You want to see how the offense moves with him. I'm going to be watching a lot of these games. I'll probably rewatch some of the games after today's over. I want to see different tendencies. I want to see the snap counts. I want to see how the offense is moving. I want to see who's getting playing time, who's getting targeted in these offenses. With New England, another thing to watch out for is how many carries is Sony Michel actually going to get. Like I said, he's coming off that off-season foot surgery. So I don't see him getting more than 15 carries. And if they're winning this game, I think Burkhead's going to get quite a few carries. I wouldn't be surprised if Rex Burkhead gets 12 carries and 3 receptions. I don't think that's out of line at all. And if you're playing in like DFS or you need like a cheap flex play because some of your guys are hurt and not going to play, you could do a lot worse than Rex Burkhead. And then James White, I think he'll be all right. If you got him in half-point PPR or full-point PPR, feel free to start him. Devin Asiasi, I do like long-term, but not in fantasy week 1. Let's see here. So I see Nathan left another comment. He said, any upsets this week for week 1? For me, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if Miami upsets the Patriots. They beat them the last game of last year, and Miami's defense is better. Cam Newton's coming in. It's a new kind of system for the Patriots. They're not real familiar with each other. Fitzpatrick could come out guns blazing, but that's probably one of the big ones. Let's see who else. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals beat the 49ers either. Kyler Murray coming into his second year, playing with Kenyon Drake and DeAndre Hopkins. Let's see who else. Not too many other major upsets. Maybe Washington upsets Philadelphia. I think it's more of a long shot. It would depend on Haskins would have to play pretty well. They'd have to be able to run the ball as well. I don't know who's favored in Chicago and Detroit, but I do like the Lions. They're at home, so they're probably favored though. Bengals could upset the Chargers, but that's probably a closer game than most people think anyways. Most of the games this week are pretty close, and especially since we haven't seen the teams play with no preseason, it's harder to tell really which teams are going to be good, which teams are going to be bad, who's going to have a good offense, who's going to have a good defense, who's going to break out. There's so much, especially this year in week 1, that we're going to be watching all the games, just trying to figure out the tendencies of every team. And then, where were we at? So we were at Green Bay and Minnesota. I wouldn't play either of these defenses this week. I think Aaron Rodgers could have a good game if LaFleur doesn't handcuff him. Obviously, Minnesota, their cornerbacks are gone from last year. They don't have Xavier Rhodes, they don't have Mackenzie Alexander, and they don't have Trey Waynes anymore. They replaced them with rookies pretty much, and like second, third year guys that didn't have a lot of experience. I think it's a good advantage for Devontae Adams. Whoever's on the opposite side in Green Bay could have an okay game, whether it's Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Anemias St. Brown, but you just don't know who it is. In Fantasy Week 1, you can't play them. Be interesting to see how Green Bay uses their tight ends between Jay Sternberger, Robert Tonyan, and Josiah DeGuara. It'll be also interesting to see how many snaps Aaron Jones actually gets. Even when he was good last year, he still only got like 60% of the snaps. Then they said Jamal Williams looked good in camp this year. They've been saying, they drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round. So it'll be really interesting to see how they use Aaron Jones this year. Personally, I hope Aaron Jones goes somewhere else after this year, because I think fantasy-wise and in real life, if he goes somewhere else, it's going to help him a lot because they're limited in his skill set. For the Vikings, Kirk Cousins, I think, could have an okay game, but he's not somebody you're going to start. Dalvin Cook should have a pretty good game. The Packers' run defense is pretty bad. Alexander Madison, you could see him come in and get some snaps and be effective as well, but he's not somebody you're going to start in fantasy, obviously. Adam Thielen, I think, will have a good game. The other receivers for Minnesota, I'm not going to touch. I don't think Justin Jefferson is not likely to start. He's probably going to come in 3 wide receiver sets, but he is a rookie. He missed a lot of camp as well, and the rumors out of camp haven't been that good. I like him long term. I like him for dynasty, but for 2020, I really haven't. I'm really not sold on Justin Jefferson. Irv Smith could be a sleeper. He's an athletic tight end. If they use him, move him around, he could have a good game. Kyle Rudolph's somebody that you're not going to want to touch because he's completely touchdown dependent. If he doesn't have a touchdown, he's useless. If he's got a touchdown, he's all right. Then we got the Colts and the Jaguars. So Phillip Rivers is not somebody I'm looking to start. this week. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. Frank Wright wants to run the ball. You're going to have Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor. I think both of them are viable flex plays depending on your roster. But I don't think either one's going to carry the workload enough to be like a running back one this week. I kind of like Paris Campbell in this matchup, but I don't like any of their wide receivers too much. I probably wouldn't start any of them, not even T.Y. Hilton, just because I think they're going to run the ball so much, and especially if it rains there today. Jack Doyle could be an interesting streamer at tight end. The Colts defense I like a lot this week. Jacksonville isn't projected to be very good. Obviously, it all depends on Gardner Minshew because they got rid of Fournette. They don't have much of an offensive line. They don't have that great of weapons around him. But if Minshew Mania takes off again, who knows? Maybe they do decent today. Gardner Minshew, like obviously he'd be an okay streamer, but I think there's a lot better options. So he's not somebody you're going to start unless you're in like a super flex or a 2-quarterback league. Jacksonville running backs. If you are one of them people that picked up James Robinson, please do not start him this week. Like he's an undrafted free agent rookie. We have no idea how many touches he's going to get. He's going to be in a negative game strip. Like he's not going to put up enough fantasy points to matter. So like pretty much anybody you have instead of him is probably a better option. Or if Chris Thompson's out on the waiver wire, pick him up instead. I think Chris Thompson will have a decent game. Usually, as long as he's healthy, he's been pretty good. His problem is he's never healthy. And then I think DJ Chark will have a decent game. It'll be interesting to see how they use Laviska Shenault and D.D. Westbrook in this offense now. They've talked that they're going to put D.D. Westbrook back on the outside. When he was at Oklahoma and he played on the outside, he was actually pretty good. But in the past, Jacksonville stuck him in the slot and limited his upside that way. Laviska Shenault could do pretty well in the slot. It'll be interesting to see how they use him. I think they should use him a little bit as a running back too, kind of dump off passes in the backfield, draw plays, a little bit of stuff like that. I do have a little bit of durability concerns with him, as he has had quite a few injuries in the past. But he's a guy that could be like waiver wire pickup next week, especially if he gets a lot of touches. So for him, it's going to be important to see how many snaps is Shenault actually playing and where do his touches come from. Let's see. Got a couple more comments here, so I'm going to look at these ones real quick. Let's see. Nathan said that he thinks the Vikings will beat the Packers. I actually do think the Vikings will beat the Packers too. I don't really think that's too big an upset. I think they're pretty even teams though. And then we had Greenlight down below too. Carson Wentz or Cam Newton. God, that's like one I really wish I didn't. Like if I'm picking, I don't really want to like pick those two guys. So Wentz probably has the better matchup, but Newton has the higher upside. So it's kind of dependent on the rest of your team construction. Take a look at that. See whether or not you need some. If you need somebody to really go off, probably do Cam Newton. If you need somebody that's a little bit safer, I'd go with Carson Wentz. And then let's see, where were we at? So we're at the Bears and the Lions today. So you're not going to start Mitchell Trubisky unless you're playing him in DFS pretty much. In DFS, he's essentially free. He's like the cheapest quarterback you can get. He's actually done well against the Lions. We talked about this in one of my other videos, I believe yesterday. But overall, he's not a good quarterback. And in fantasy, like you have to worry about if he plays bad, are they just going to pull him out right away for Nick Foles? And like it's just a big risk. We talked about David Montgomery a little bit already. If he plays, like you're going to start him as a flex play, but if you got a better option, I'd probably go with a different option. Tariq Cohen, I do like as a solid flex play. I do like him in DFS if David Montgomery does not play. I do love both the Bears wide receivers this week. I like Robinson and I like Miller. I think both of them should have a good week against the Detroit defense that's not very good. The Bears tight ends, do not mess with the Bears tight ends this week. Jimmy Graham, Cole Kmet, the other like 4 tight ends they have there. I know Matt yesterday in our DFS thing, he's like, pick up Jimmy Graham. He's only like 5,000 or whatever on FanDuel. Like, I can't trust Jimmy Graham. like I said in that video, Trubisky does not throw to the tight end, so it's not a position that I want to be in. Detroit, I do like Matthew Stafford. I'm pretty much going to fire Matthew Stafford like every week if I have him, unless I have a better option. I will not touch any of the Detroit running backs this week. I am starting Kerryon Johnson like one of my dynasty leagues, but that's it. I don't know if I don't think DeAndre Swift will actually play. So maybe Peterson and Johnson, one of them could have a decent game, but this early in the season, you do not know who it's going to be, so it's not worth risking. We already talked about Kenny Galladay. We talked about the wide receivers a little bit already for the Detroit Lions. Galladay's probably going to miss, so you're going to want to start somebody else instead of him. Marvin Jones, I do like a lot this week, especially with Galladay missing. In the games where he's received at least 10 targets from Matt Stafford, he's averaged 23 PPR points for fantasy. And like the Bears corners aren't that good. Like Fuller's good. Fuller's decent, but he's not somebody that's going to completely shut Marvin Jones down. Amendola could have an okay week, but he's not somebody I'm trusting. Plus, he's got a hamstring injury of his own. Then we got guys like Marvin Hall and Quintez Cephas that could potentially play across from Jones. One of them could have a good week, but they're mainly DFS plays, and we don't know which one it's going to be. And then, let's see. Hawkinson, he's an okay streamer tight end this week. Neither of these defenses I'm going to be starting. We'll go over to the Raiders and the Panthers. Getting some water here. So with the Raiders and the Panthers, you don't want to start either one of these defenses. Both these defenses are terrible. But with that being said, there's a lot of attractive options for fantasy in this matchup. Derek Carr is one of my favorite streamer picks for the week. I think he'll have a good game, especially against this porous Carolina defense. The Panthers, I do like Teddy Bridgewater against the Raiders. He's not like a must starter or anything like that. Christian McCaffrey and Josh Jacobs both obviously have good matchups. Then you got DJ Moore, that's a smash play. And then you got Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, Curtis Samuel, and Robbie Anderson. I'm probably not going to start Robbie Anderson or Curtis Samuel just because you don't know which one's going to be the wide receiver number 2. You don't know who's going to get the snaps, and you don't know who's going to get the targets. That's definitely something to watch out this week. I'm not starting Ruggs or Edwards unless I have to. But in DFS, this is a matchup to target because I believe it will be a high-scoring game, and a lot of them guys are real cheap. Then Darren Waller, where you drafted Waller, you're going to start him anyways, but this is a good matchup for him. And then Ian Thomas, you're not going to start this week. I think he's been banged up as well. And until we see something really see something from Ian Thomas, I wouldn't trust him. Then the Jets and the Bills. This is a matchup that I'm not very excited about. You're not going to start Sam Darnold. Le'Veon Bell, feel free to start as your running back number 2. He should be pretty safe there, especially in PPR and half-point PPR. I don't think he's going to have a great game, but he's not going to hurt you. Then Jamison Crowder is the only wide receiver I like for the Jets, and that's mainly in PPR and half-point PPR. He should see a lot of targets. You don't want to. Obviously, Denzel Mims is out. You do not want to touch Perriman, especially going against Tre'Davious White. Chris Herndon could be okay streamer tight end, but he's one of them guys I want to see a little bit more from him before I go out and start him. Buffalo defense is decent against the tight end, but Darnold doesn't really have anybody to throw to. You could be looking at them starting Chris Hogan as one of the wide receivers on the outside. That's how bad it is. Then Buffalo, Josh Allen you can start and feel fine about it. Singletary and Moss, I'm not really too keen on starting these two guys this week, but if you start them as flex plays, if you don't have a better option, that's fine. Diggs and Brown could be all right this week. Beasley, I probably wouldn't start. Dawson Knox, we're obviously not starting until he shows something more. And then Buffalo defense is a good start against the Jets. Then the next matchup we got was Cleveland and Baltimore. The Browns, you're not going to start Baker Mayfield against the Ravens defense. The Ravens do have very good defense. Nick Chubb, where you drafted him, you're probably going to have to start him. It'll be really interesting to see how they use Nick Chubb this year with Kareem Hunt being there all off season and coming into week 1. How Stefanski chooses to run the offense. You can start Odell and Jarvis Landry and feel pretty confident about it. It's not the best matchup in the world, but they shouldn't kill you. Austin Hooper, David Njoku, I'm not starting either one of them tight ends this year. I don't think either of them get enough volume that they're going to matter, so they're completely touchdown reliant. Cleveland's defense, you do not want to start against Baltimore. They were like the highest scoring team last year. Then Baltimore side, you're obviously starting Lamar Jackson. You can start Mark Ingram You can start Ingram with confidence in this matchup. You're not going to play Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins week 1. Too big a risk. Hollywood Brown, you can play and feel all right. Like I said, if Denzel Ward does shadow him, it may limit his value somewhat. But having him come in full strength, he's going to be a good player for this year. Mark Andrews, you're obviously starting. Baltimore defense you can use as well and feel confident about it. Seattle and Atlanta, this is going to be a big shootout. You're not going to start either one of these defenses because this is going to be one of the highest point scoring game of the week. Obviously, if you got Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, you feel free to start them. You can't go wrong there, especially in this matchup. Both defenses as bad as they are. Seattle's defense is a little bit better in this matchup. Their defensive backs are better than Atlanta's, but Seattle doesn't really have a pass rush, which could benefit Atlanta, but Atlanta doesn't have much of an offensive line either way, so you're kind of like a catch-22. Seattle, and then you go to Chris Carson and Todd Gurley. Feel free to use both of them in this matchup. They're probably going to be running back 2s for you this week. Both of them should see good volume, and they should be effective. They each could see a touchdown, and depending on their passing game usage, they could be very valuable as well. Then you got Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. I like both these guys this week. And Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley I like as well. Hayden Hurst is a guy that I do love for fantasy and DFS this week. And then Seattle, you're not going to want to touch the tight ends because you got Greg Olsen, you got Jacob Hollister, and you got Will Disley. There's just too many mouths to feed. We don't know which one's going to play. That's obviously something that we do want to monitor a little bit more closely as well. Then we'll get into the afternoon games in a minute here. The afternoon game, so we got the Chargers and the Bengals. Tyrod Taylor is a decent streamer. He's a decent guy for DFS against the Bengals defense. The Bengals defense is not very special. But like I said earlier with the Chargers, they could be missing up to 3 offensive linemen, so maybe Tyrod Taylor's not a guy you want to use now. He does have that rushing upside that does help you a lot in fantasy. Austin Eckler, I do like this week. Like I said, I think they're going to have to throw him the ball if they can't run the ball as well. I do like Joshua Kelly in DFS. He's pretty cheap over on DraftKings. I did talk about that a little bit further. Mike Williams, we're not going to touch. I think Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry both have a decent week. I think you can start the Chargers defense against Joe Burrow. I don't think Burrow's going to have a bad game, but I don't think he's going to have a great game either. But with that being said, you don't start Joe Burrow week 1 just because he threw 60-some touchdowns at LSU and looked like the greatest quarterback in the world. He's still a rookie quarterback. He's going to struggle at times, but he's going to be all right. I love Joe Mixon. I think Joe Mixon will have a decent week. Tyler Boyd's the only wide receiver I really want to start in Cincinnati. He's got that chemistry with Joe Burrow already. He's the safe guy. AJ Green's probably going to be on a snap count. That's something else that we do want to monitor in this game is how many snaps AJ Green actually plays. And then the same thing with John Ross and T. Higgins. The game I kind of talked about already is a little bit of upset. Is the Cardinals and the 49ers. Obviously, you got the wildfire concerns, the air quality with this game. Sounds like the game's still going to happen. If you got Tevin Coleman, make sure you're not starting him. I don't know if many people are actually starting Tevin Coleman anyways. But it could help out Raheem Mostert. It could help out Jerick McKinnon. And it could help out Jeff Wilson Jr. Obviously, McKinnon and Jeff Wilson Jr. are probably more DFS plays than anything. Jimmy Garoppolo is somebody you could stream in this matchup and probably do all right. He did relatively well against the Cardinals last year. but he's not the greatest quarterback in the world, and he's probably okay for DFS. Just depends on how much they run the ball. Obviously, like the wide receivers I already talked about, you don't want to touch any of the wide receivers for San Francisco this week. Maybe in DFS, if you want to play a Kendrick Bourne or a Trent Taylor or Brandon Ayuk for cheap, you could try that, but like it's just a risk. If you're just trying to get somebody cheap and hit big on them, it could work out though. And then you got George Kittle. You're obviously going to play him. San Francisco 49ers defense, feel free to play them. They're still a good defense. I think Arizona will move the ball a little bit better than people think, especially with Kyler Murray coming in the second year. I know a lot of people are talking about benching Kyler Murray this week. He actually played decent against the 49ers last year, and I think you're still okay starting him. Kenyon Drake did have that one good game against the 49ers last year, so I'm fine starting him as well. I'm going to start DeAndre Hopkins in this matchup. Christian Kirk is a borderline flex play for me. I'm not sold on him this year, but he does have a decent matchup. Then you're not going to play Larry Fitzgerald or Andy Isabella or Dan Arnold. And you're not playing you're not playing Cardinals defense this year. You're not playing the Cardinals defense in this matchup week 1. Their defense could be better than it was last year, but we have to kind of see it on paper before we start to trust it. Then we got Tampa Bay and New Orleans. Like I said, I don't think this game is going to be as high scoring as people think. I actually do like New Orleans defense as a sleeper in this matchup, because I think Tampa might actually struggle game 1 with Tom Brady, with Gronk, with all these new pieces that aren't familiar with each other in a shortened offseason with no preseason games. So I'm not starting Tom Brady this week. I'm not starting any of the Tampa Bay running backs. I don't trust them. I think Ronald Jones will get the bulk load of the carries, but even then, at most he's a flex play, and Bruce Arians has been known to take him out of the game. Like if he misses a block, it's just too risky, especially in week 1. I do like Godwin. Like I said, Evans is probably going to be more of a distraction if he does play. I don't really trust any of the Tampa Bay tight ends this week. I think Gronk's going to be on that snap count. O.J. Howard's so hit or miss. Cameron Brate's still a decent tight end too, so then they got 3 of them. It's just kind of like playing with the running backs. You're just playing with fire. You don't know what you're going to get. The Saints, I like Drew Brees in this matchup. Feel free to start him. I like obviously you're going to start Alvin Kamara. You took him as a top 5 pick in the draft most likely. Latavius Murray could be a sleeper flex play in this matchup. Tampa Bay was pretty good against the run though, so you're probably not starting him week 1, but I wouldn't be surprised if Murray gets more carries this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints run the ball more this year as well. Jared Cook's fine in this matchup. Michael Thomas, you're obviously starting. Emmanuel Sanders, I don't love for this year, but there is a chance that he does well in this matchup. Then we got Cowboys and the Rams. I do like this matchup a lot. There's a lot of good matchups. Got a lot of good fantasy plays in this matchup. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, so you're not going to want to play either of the two defenses. Obviously, where you drafted Dak Prescott, you're going to be playing him, so he's a must-start. Same thing with Ezekiel Elliott. I'm not playing Amari Cooper this week. He's already banged up. He's got Jalen Ramsey on him. He's not going to do anything. He's just boom or bust this week, especially with Ramsey covering him. I like Gallup somewhat. You could play him as a flex play. I do like CeeDee Lamb a lot this week. Even being a rookie coming in, I think he's got a great matchup against the Rams. And especially in DFS, I think on DraftKings he's like 4,100, so he's almost a steal there. I like Blake Jarwin as well. I've been kind of talking about that with my starts of the week and some of the DFS content. I think he's got a great matchup, especially with the Rams losing Corey Littleton. That could make a big difference, and he could have a big week. Then the Rams, I think Goff will have a decent game. Jared Goff's actually kind of underrated. If you look at his stats from last year, he just struggled against some of the better teams. I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I don't think the running backs are going to be very good in this game. So I think Goff, if you need to start him, you can. If you want to start him in DFS and stack him with like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, you can do that as well. Malcolm Brown is going to get the start in this game. at running back. I think he's going to get 12 to 14 carries. I think he's going to get the bulk load of the carries. Everybody's hyped on Cam Akers, and I don't see Cam Akers doing anything this week. Dallas defense is decent against the run. Henderson's going to play probably. And I actually like Henderson a lot better than Akers. And it's just a mess of a backfield, so it's one I'm avoiding. Then I like Robert Woods. I like Cooper Kupp a lot this week. I do like Van Jefferson as a sleeper play in DFS, but like in a regular fantasy league, he's not somebody I want to touch until we see what he does. Then we'll go over to Pittsburgh and New York. So you want to play Pittsburgh's defense in this. Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, he just turns the ball over like crazy, whether it's interceptions or all the fumbles he had last year. Giants' offensive line's not that good. I know they brought in Andrew Thomas, but Nate Solder is holding out. Or not, excuse me, he opted out, not holding out. I think Barkley will struggle in this game, but I think the Giants are going to want to run the ball early, especially with Jason Garrett as the offensive coordinator now. Golden Tate might not play, so that might help Sterling Shepard a little bit, but he's still probably going against Joe Hayden. Pittsburgh defense is very, very good. Evan Ingram could have a decent game, but he's not somebody I'm really sold on, especially for this season. Big Ben does have a great matchup in this game, but he is historically not very good on the road. So if you want to stream him, go ahead, but if not, that's fine too. This is his first game back coming off an injury too. So it's just a big chance, and I wouldn't risk it, especially with some of the other options out there this week. James Conner I do like a lot in this matchup. Giants defense is just bad. Then I like Juju Smith-Schuster. I like Deontay Johnson in this matchup as well. I think Chase Claypool for like DFS, he could be pretty good value at $3,000 on DraftKings if he gets a touchdown. I like Eric Ebron a lot in this matchup. I don't think the Giants linebackers can cover him. They're missing Xavier McKinney at safety. It's a good matchup for him, and if you can stream him, it's one that I do like a lot this week. But there is a lot of good streaming tight ends for this week as well. Tennessee and Denver, the last two. Both these defenses, they're kind of like middle of the road. You could start them and not do too awful in fantasy. So if that's your option, feel fine to do so. The Titans did pick up Jadeveon Clowney. That should help their defense a little bit. But I think he's going to be on a snap count week 1. This is not a matchup I'm going to use Ryan Tannehill. Derrick Henry, feel free to use. A.J. Brown, feel free to use. We're not touching Corey Davis. We're not touching Adam Humphries, especially week 1. Let's see how week 1 plays out. If those guys do well in week 1, if their snap count's good, if they get a bigger target share, feel free to use them at that point. But not now. Jonnu Smith could have a decent game. I think he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver for Tennessee, essentially, even coming from that tight end position. Denver's linebackers are nothing to write home about, so he could have a good matchup. He's very athletic, and he's a good sleeper pick at tight end for this year. Denver, do not start Drew Lock. We cannot start Drew Lock until we know the weapons around him are good. We know Drew Lock has made a step up in his game overall. Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, they're going to be splitting carries. I don't really want to start either of these two guys, but if you have to, I understand that. If you don't have any better options, then you kind of have to. Cortland Sutton, I'm trying to avoid with the shoulder injury now. Jerry Jeudy, like I said earlier, you could play him if Sutton misses time. He could be a decent value. Tim Patrick is a decent sleeper for DFS. When he's played, he's been decent. And I don't know exactly how expensive he is on DraftKings, but I know he's got to be dirt cheap. So that's another guy to look out for. Noah Fant could have a decent game if Cortland Sutton does miss time as well. But he's not somebody I'm banking on either. But that's kind of a little look over the matchups, some of the things that I'm looking out for this week. We'll see if some of the inactives are through yet. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Did that not refresh? Please check back soon. So it looks like the inactive reports aren't up yet, but the games are about to start. So I'm gonna Google it, see if I can find it over there. So we're gonna go over NFL inactive week one. All right. So these are the inactive reports that I got up now. I think it's lagging a little bit for you guys as well. But we got the Eagles and we got the Redskins, or Washington football team, excuse me. So Eagles inactives: Jalen Hurts, Alshon Jeffrey, Miles Sanders. So the big one here is Lane Johnson being inactive. This kills the value of Carson Wentz. And if I could pivot off of Wentz, I'd probably do so. The big one for the Washington football team is Bryce Love. So Bryce Love not playing this week is a big deal to me. That probably means Gibson gets more touches. It means Peyton Barber and J.D. McKissic also get more touches. It means that they don't think Bryce Love is ready to play yet. And with that being said, that's kind of a big deal as well. Then let's see, Miami and New England. See if there's any big ones here. Biggest one for the Dolphins is probably Lynn Bowden Jr. He just got traded over from the Redskins, so I'm not too surprised by this. As he's being new to the offense. But it does give Mike Gesicki a bump a little bit. It gives Jakeem Grant a little bit of a bump. But you're not playing Grant in fantasy anyways. Patriots ones are kind of interesting here. So Stidham's inactive. So Hoyer's going to be the backup quarterback. Dalton Keene is inactive, so that might bump up Asiasi. But like I said, we're not playing him. Maybe if you're in DFS, you could play him. Then Josh Uche is the other big one at linebacker. He was their second round pick, and he was going to have a lot of that. He had a lot of potential. So seeing him inactive week one is kind of interesting. Then we got the Packers and the Vikings. Let's see if there's any interesting ones here. Big one for the Packers, Jordan Love is inactive, and so he's not going to be the backup quarterback. Looks like it's going to be Boyle or Doyle or whatever his name is. He's no good anyways. So hopefully if you're a Packers fan, Aaron Rodgers doesn't get hurt. Then Equinea St. Brown is inactive, so that gives MVS and Alan Lazard a bump up. And Billy Turner's inactive, so like I mentioned earlier, that could impact their running game a little bit. Then the Vikings don't have any real big ones inactive here. Most of these guys were just rookies. Let's see at the Colts. The Colts don't really have any big inactive ones here. Jacob Eason maybe, but Jacoby Brissett's the backup anyways. The big one for Jacksonville, D.D. Westbrook. D.D. Westbrook being inactive is kind of crazy. Honestly. So this gives Laviska Shenault a big bump up, and it gives Chris Conley a bump up. So maybe if you're in DFS, you can play Conley or Laviska Shenault. That might help you out as well. Let's see, we got a couple more people asking some questions here. So TS says James White or Bell in full PPR flex. I'm assuming this is Le'Veon Bell. So I would go with Le'Veon Bell. I know it's not the best matchup in the world, but he's obviously going to get more touches. And then we got Johnny Maz, who is Renfro, Bourne, or Moss in half PPR. So I'm going to assume this is Zach Moss that you're talking about. So for me, this is pretty much between Renfro and Moss. I think Moss has the higher upside, especially in half-point PPR. Maybe if it was full-point PPR, I'd consider Renfro. But with Kendrick Bourne, Kendrick Bourne is so touchdown reliant, and we don't know if Ayuk's going to play yet, and we don't know how Trent Taylor's going to do. And I think they're going to run the ball a lot. So I'd probably go Zach Moss in that case. And let's see, looking back at the inactives again, so we got the Bears and the Lions. See, nobody real interesting on the Bears. Riley Ridley's on there, but he wasn't expected to make an impact anyways. Then the Lions. Kenny Galladay's inactive, so that's the biggest one. And then Vaitai is inactive as well. So they're going to be missing their right tackle and they're going to be missing their wide receiver. Looks like Danny Amendola is going to play. So it'll be interesting to see who plays on the other side across from Marvin Jones, whether it's Marvin Hall or Quintez Cephas. But it does give Marvin Jones that big bump up again. Then we got the Raiders and the Panthers. No big news for the Raiders. For inactive wise, Panthers, biggest one here probably PJ Walker, which is kind of interesting since Matt Rule was his college coach. So it looks like they're going to go with Will Grier as the backup behind Teddy Bridgewater. But overall, no big fantasy implications from that. Then we got the Jets and the Bills. So it looks like the Jets have James Morgan and Joe Flacco as inactive. So who the heck's their backup quarterback this week? Oh, I think they got David Fowles too, maybe. Avery Williamson is a big inactive. That's going to help out Buffalo's run game. Not that they needed any more help. Not too many big names for the Bills. TJ Yeldon being inactive, a good sign for Zach Moss though. The Browns and the Ravens. So let's see. Greedy Williams is out. That's probably the biggest one for the Browns. Vikings. I don't know why it says Vikings. Ravens. So for the Ravens is, let's see, Justice Hill's the biggest one that's out. Then with the Seahawks, so we got the Seahawks and the Falcons now. Philip Dorsett's out, so he's not going to be the number 3 wide receiver. Looks like it'll probably be Paul Richardson there. But either way, that's not going to matter too much for fantasy. He's not somebody you're going to start either way. DJ Dallas being inactive is a big deal, actually. He's a good pass-catching back. So it means Chris Carson's probably going to get most of the third down work. Could raise his ceiling a little bit in terms of catches, at least. The Falcons, the biggest one we had was Kendall Sheffield. We already talked about that one a little bit. But that's pretty much it overall. Those are the inactives for the early games. Nothing too major. Just went over them real quick. But with that being said, we're getting real close to the game time now, guys. I know. So if you guys have any more questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm probably going to end this pretty soon. If you guys haven't checked out some of the content on my channel, I would greatly appreciate it if you do so. We got a lot of videos out coming, and we got a lot of videos that are out already. We got a lot of great content that we're going to be putting out in the future as well. I'm also going to be writing some articles out, like I did mention before, on the Podcastic Network, and then I'm going to be this week I'll probably be putting out an article on there as well, and with that article I'm just going to be doing pretty much game by game, like the biggest things that I seen or my biggest takeaways from each game. And I might put that in a video as well this week. Monday we'll have a little bit, or so tomorrow, Monday we'll have guys that did perform, guys that I biggest impacts of the weekend essentially. And then Tuesday we'll talk about waivers. Wednesday we'll be doing some the Thursday night preview. Thursday I'll probably do some DFS. Friday I'll do some previews of the regular games and just a little bit more on that. But for those of you that did join me today, I really do appreciate you doing it. Like I said, this was my first live stream, and it's a little new for me as well, but it's something that I'm going to try to do probably every Sunday. If you guys have any other start-sit questions, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's in the comments in this live stream, whether it's in the comments of the other video. If you guys have any questions at all, especially for fantasy football in 2020, feel free to reach out to me. Or you can also reach out to me at CoachCraigSports@gmail.com, on Twitter at CoachCraigSport, on the Coach Craig Sports Facebook page, obviously on Facebook. If you're in the fantasy football discussion group on Facebook, feel free to reach out to me on there as well. I do reply to a lot of people's posts on there, give my insight as much as I can. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I had for this live stream for today. Hopefully we'll have a great slate of football. Well, we have a great slate of football games out. Hopefully this season hopefully we'll be able to see all the games this year. Hopefully there's no major impacts from COVID-19, obviously. But with that being said, that's all I got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you're new to my channel, if you're not familiar with me, like I said, check out my videos. I would appreciate it if you guys did subscribe. It helps build the community that I am trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports. I'm really trying to help you guys, especially have some fun with fantasy football, especially in the year 2020, and build some championship rosters as well. But if you guys are new, if you are a new or current subscriber who hasn't already done so, be sure to hit that notification bell as well when you do subscribe. It'll let you know every single time that I do put up a video. And like I said, feel free to reach out to me anytime you guys want. I try to respond back to everybody as much as I can. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this live stream. I hope you guys all do well in your fantasy matchups. Like I said, if you have any more questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. And I hope you all enjoy a great Sunday of football. Like I said, I'll be doing an article this week talking about what I've seen, just my different findings from every game. And then on Monday, we'll obviously be doing the video with the takeaway for like the top performers for this week. People that kind of came out of nowhere and did things that we didn't expect. Stuff like that. But that's pretty much all I got for this live stream. I do thank you guys for all of you that did join me today. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day as well.